Remember when Denzel Washington marched a football team through Gettysburg fog and the world learned left side, strong side? That speech, that undefeated season, none of it was guaranteed. Today, we're counting down 15 weird facts you never knew about. Remember the Titans. Number 15. Here is where the whole movie begins. Not in a studio, not with a producer, and not with a famous director. It begins with a writer who moved to a new city and noticed something strange. That opening title card and Cheryl Yost's nostalgic voiceover feel like standard Hollywood setup. Screenwriter Gregory Allen Howard didn't research this story on assignment. He moved to Alexandria, Virginia in the mid-1990s and noticed how unusually integrated the community felt compared to most of the country. Locals told him a 1971 high school football team had quietly helped bring the city together. Howard tracked down the real Herman Boone and Bill Yost independently, built trust with both over time, and then wrote the entire screenplay on spec. No studio paid him. No producer asked for it. He wrote it because he believed the story deserved to exist. That decision ended up making history. Howard became the first African-American screenwriter to script a $100 million grossing dramatic motion picture from a spec script in Hollywood history. That distinction shaped how specifically he wrote every black character in the film. Think about that the next time you watch that opening narration. It is not boilerplate. It is the hook that pulled a stranger into a forgotten true story and convinced him to spend years writing it for free. And getting Hollywood to actually buy it turned out to be its own war. Number 14. That polished Disney logo and Bruckheimer production sheen make Remember the Titans feel like a guaranteed crowd pleaser. The kind of movie studios greenlight without hesitation. That is not what happened. Gregory Allen Howard said it plainly. I pitched it to every entity in Hollywood, which is the truth, and they all rejected it. Several of them said, we can do it as a football story, but you have to take this race stuff out. Studios wanted football. They did not want integration. The script sat. Even Disney passed multiple times. The project only got a third look because of an unrelated blockbuster. Producer Chad Oman resent the script on the Monday morning after Armageddon opened huge in 1998, arguing that film had generated enough profit on Saturday alone to fund the entire Remember the Titans budget. Disney finally said yes. Even then, producer Jerry Bruckheimer and associate producer Jen Worthington had to fight their own studio to keep it moving. The budget was locked at a modest $30 million, not a confident investment for a film that went on to earn $136.8 million worldwide. The movie shown in classrooms and locker rooms for more than 2 decades only exists because an asteroid blockbuster opened big enough to justify the financial risk. Even with money committed, the central casting decision almost collapsed before a single frame was shot. Number 13. Denzel Washington as Coach Herman Boone is one of those performances so completely associated with a role that imagining anyone else in it becomes impossible. But he was not the first name on the list. Producers initially looked at Lawrence Fishburne. The reason was simple math. Washington's reported asking price of $12 million was difficult to absorb into a $30 million production budget. Washington himself was hesitant, having just come off the hurricane and wasn't immediately certain the script was right for him. To make up his mind, Washington arranged to meet the real Herman Boone before committing. The meeting was, in Washington's own word, prickly. Boone told him directly that he was all wrong for the part, mostly because I'm not handsome enough. He did not appear to be joking. Most actors would have walked out. Washington walked in deeper. Rather than being put off, he found exactly what he needed. Boone's dry, demanding authority, the specific quality of a man who had nothing to prove and genuinely did not care whether you liked him. The friction Washington felt in that room fed directly into the unsmiling, unbothered Coach audiences have watched for 25 years. Every time Boone refuses to soften on screen, you are watching Washington channel a man who told him to his face he was wrong for the job. Washington was locked, but a future major star almost got cut for an entirely different reason. Number 12. If you ever watched Remember the Titans and wondered why Ryan Gosling's Alan Bosley seems cheerfully out of place among the harder-edged players, there is a reason for that energy. He almost was not in the movie at all. Producer Jerry Bruckheimer did not want him. He told casting director Ronna Kress flatly that Gosling doesn't look like a football player, and the objection was practical. On top of that, securing a work visa for the then unknown Canadian actor created a genuine logistical obstacle with a real timeline attached to it. Director Boaz Yakin pushed back hard. His argument was simple. This was high school football, and a real team needed at least one guy who looked like he had no business being out there. Yakin saw Gosling's offbeat energy as the element that would keep the ensemble from feeling uniform. He called Gosling the straw that stirs the drink. Bruckheimer gave in, but he made sure Yakin felt it. According to Yakin, any time he asked for something and met resistance for the rest of production, Bruckheimer's response was consistent. Every time I would want something, he'd say, "Hey, I gave you Gosling." The result is an early on-screen credit for a future Oscar winner, secured because a director refused to back down. Every scene Bosley appears in exists because Yakin went over a producer's objection. Gosling was just one of many compromises, though. Disney's content demands forced far bigger ones throughout the entire production. Number 11, that surprisingly clean, family-friendly atmosphere running through a film set during one of the most volatile periods in American racial history is not an artistic choice. It is a studio mandate. Gregory Allen Howard's original spec script was not restrained. Racial slurs, profanity, and a far more brutal depiction of the era's hostility were present throughout the draft. When Disney came on board, they came with conditions. Howard later described going through 2 pages of swear words that the studio required him to remove. The language went. Then came the details. The real Herman Boone was a committed chain smoker, and Howard had used that detail as a physical indicator of anxiety, a small human truth that grounded the character. Disney's position was firm. Nobody smokes in our movies. The cigarettes were removed. Director Boaz Yakin described the content restrictions as feeling like being handcuffed, forced to depict 1971-era racial hostility within a box sized for a PG-rated audience. He wanted to show the real weight of what those players and coaches faced. The studio wanted something a family could watch together comfortably. Every moment in the film that stops just short of showing you what actually happened during that era is the result of that corporate calculus. The restraint is institutional, not artistic. And it extended further than language and character detail. It reached into a real act of intimidation against Coach Boone's own family. Number 10. That brick hurling through Coach Boone's window is the film's shorthand for the hostility his family endured. It lands as a vivid, disturbing moment. But it is not what actually happened. In reality, it was not a brick. It was a toilet, and Boone himself said it was far more devastating than what the movie chose to show. Per Boone's DVD commentary, Disney made the call directly. They felt that depicting a toilet thrown through a family's window was too much for a family-branded production, and the swap required no creative justification beyond the studio's comfort level. A brick was disturbing enough. A toilet was apparently a step too far. Boone was consistent in interviews about what these edits represented. The film repeatedly understated how vicious the real hostility against his family was during that season. The toilet was one of several details he felt the movie softened to keep the audience comfortable. This was part of a consistent pattern in which every real act of hatred in the story was adjusted down to a level Disney considered appropriate. The studio threaded a needle. Make the racism visible enough to carry meaning, but not so visible it became difficult to sell. The brick on screen is Disney's version of something uglier than they were willing to show. Not everything was toned down, though. The film's most iconic scene was invented whole cloth and made far bigger than anything that actually happened. Number 9, Coach Boone waking his team before dawn, marching them through fog to the Gettysburg battlefield, delivering the speech that became the emotional backbone of the film. That is the scene most people remember first. It was never in the original screenplay. Gregory Allen Howard's script placed the speech near an ordinary practice field. No fog, no battlefield, no cemetery at first light. The Gettysburg setting did not come from the writer or the director. It came from producer Chad Oman. Oman pushed to make the setting the theme, arguing the speech kept coming out and didn't have much gravity to it at the original location. He wanted somewhere that could carry the full weight of what Boone was saying about sacrifice and history. Gettysburg was his answer. The relocated scene became one of the first sequences shot and set the emotional tone for everything that followed. Jerry Bruckheimer called it the touchstone of the entire film. Director Boaz Yakin recalled Washington arriving so completely in character that Yakin said the air was bending around him. The moment the whole movie is built around, the speech quoted in locker rooms and classrooms for 25 years, was born from a producer's location note, not the writer's original vision. And the young actors who had to deliver those scenes had to earn their place in them through something genuinely difficult. Number 8, those physically convincing football sequences, the hard tackles and real-looking plays, hold up because the cast actually earned them. What the actors went through to prepare was not comfortable, and that was entirely by design. Most of the principal cast had minimal organized football experience before production. Football coordinator Mike Fisher ran them through a genuine training camp before filming began. To populate the field, the production held an 800-person open call in Atlanta that brought in high school, college, and semi-pro players to serve as extras and practice opponents. That last group caused problems. Craig Kirkwood later recalled that the semi-pro extras forgot themselves during contact drills and hit the actors at full force. The extras were used to playing against people who hit back at that level. The actors were not. Donald Faison remembered a separate challenge: 9 cast members pushing a blocking sled with Denzel Washington standing on top of it in full coach mode, watching them strain without offering any encouragement. Ethan Suplee said he was pretty much incapable of the conditioning the real players were doing and was exhausted from the stretching portion alone. The physical misery was intentional. Fisher and Yakin used shared suffering to make strangers move and react like a team that had played together for years. It worked. The tackles on screen are not all stunt choreography. Some of those hits landed, and the discomfort you see on the actors' faces is not always a performance. All right, we're at the halfway mark, and things are about to get even wilder. Before we hit the top 7, what's your favorite Remember the Titans quote or moment? Drop it in the comments. Smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It really does help the channel grow. Number 7, the hospital scene, where the team gathers around the paralyzed Jerry Bruckheimer, is where the film shifts from inspirational to genuinely heartbreaking. The line spoken by Bruckheimer's mother did not come from Gregory Allen Howard's imagination. It came from an interview with the real woman. During his research, Howard sat with Bruckheimer's mother and asked about the moment Julius Campbell came to the hospital in tears. She described wiping his face and telling him, "Tears won't make my baby walk." Howard recognized immediately that he was holding something he could not improve. He said, "There's nothing I could do more raw and more honest," and preserved it exactly as she said it. The performance built around that line was equally deliberate. Wood Harris reportedly had his castmates lie on the floor and rehearse singing "Na Na Hey Hey Kiss Him Goodbye" over them before cameras rolled, manufacturing real discomfort and grief in advance, so the emotion on screen would not have to be built from scratch on the day. The result is a scene where a documentary-level detail, preserved by a writer who knew when to leave something alone, meets actors who deliberately put themselves through discomfort to sell it honestly. The line that breaks viewers every time was said by a real mother in a real interview. A writer knew not to change a single word. The accident that put Jerry in that room, however, did not happen when the movie says it did. Number 6. The car crash that sends Jerry Bruckheimer to the hospital just before the state championship frames the title game as a tribute to a fallen teammate and gives the win a weight beyond football. There is a significant problem with that framing. In reality, Bruckheim's accident happened on December 11, 1971, after the season-ending championship banquet, where he had just been named the team's MVP. The real Bruckheim played every snap of every game that season, including the final. He was not in a hospital bed when his teammates took the field for the title. The actual crash was a single-vehicle accident in his mother's 1971 Chevrolet Camaro, later attributed to a mechanical failure in the engine motor mount, not the dramatic broadside collision shown in the film. The entire emotional structure of the third act depends on a timeline the filmmakers invented. What happened to Bruckheimer after recovery is worth knowing. He became Alexandria's first high school All-American, competed in wheelchair athletics under the coaching of Bill Yost, and won a shot put gold medal. He was killed on March 20, 1981, at 27 in a second crash caused by a drunk driver. According to ESPN's reporting, the real championship was a 27-0 shutout, no close calls, no last-second heroics. The filmmakers moved the accident to manufacture tension the real season never delivered, and borrowed the climax itself from a completely different game. Number 5. That nail-biting state championship, won on a last-second trick play, is the scene the film builds its entire third act toward. Here is the thing. It is not the championship game. The real 1971 Virginia State title was a 27-0 shutout over Andrew Lewis High School. No trick plays, no close calls, no final drive heroics. The 1971 T.C. Williams Titans went 13-0 with 9 shutouts, outscoring opponents 338-38. A dominant season that produced almost no natural cinematic drama. So the filmmakers looked for tension that actually existed in the schedule. They found it in a mid-season game against Marshall, the one genuinely close contest of the year. They used the structure of that game, including a version of the trick play that helped win it, and placed it at the end as the championship. Football coordinator Mike Fisher and director Boaz Yakin built the climactic reverse on set with actor Kip Pardue running ahead of the play. A version of that call had real precedent from the Marshall game, giving the sequence a factual foundation inside a manufactured context. Jerry Bruckheimer defended the choice plainly. "We're not making a documentary. If the drama's not there, we've got to add it." Former Dallas Cowboys running back Derek Lassick served as a football advisor to help the sequences land convincingly. The championship you hold your breath for is a mid-season game in a title game costume, and the music making it soar almost belonged to someone else entirely. Number 4. That soaring orchestral theme, Titan Spirit, has played at the Olympics, at political conventions, and in sports broadcasts for more than 2 decades. It is one of the most recognizable pieces of film music from its era. It also replaced an entirely finished score you will never hear. Trevor Rabin was not the first composer hired. John Debney was brought on originally and had already moved into the recording phase before being replaced. Debney completed his portion of the work. The studio decided to go in a different direction. Because it was a Bruckheimer production, Bruckheimer brought in his frequent collaborator Rabin to start over. Rabin had an unlikely background for film scoring. He had been the guitarist of the rock band Yes. For Remember the Titans, he went almost fully orchestral, which was unusual for him. He completed 12 cues. Only one, Titan Spirit, appeared on the official soundtrack album. Rabin later said it was one of the scores I was very happy with, which doesn't happen very often. He learned how far the theme had traveled when composer Joel McNeely called to tell him Titan Spirit was playing at Barack Obama's 2008 Democratic National Convention at a volume compared to a concert. Rabin said he got a lump in my throat. NBC began using the theme in its Olympic Games closing credits, starting with Salt Lake City in 2002. A cultural legacy nobody predicted, triggered by a late composer replacement. Number 3. Those leafy residential streets of Alexandria. The T.C. Williams Gymnasium, the neighborhood where the Boone family faces hostility, none of it is Virginia. Not a single principal scene in Remember the Titans was filmed in the state where the story is set. The entire film was shot across Georgia, dressed and photographed to pass as Northern Virginia circa 1971. Berry College in Rome stood in for the Gettysburg training camp. Covington, Georgia, doubled as downtown Alexandria. Druid Hills High School and Henry Grady High School in Atlanta were dressed as T.C. Williams. Practice sequences were filmed at Clarkston High School. Game footage was shot at Paulding County and Sprayberry stadiums. Each location was chosen for budget practicality and visual compatibility with the period. The real T.C. Williams High School, the real streets of Alexandria, the actual community at the center of the story, none of them appear anywhere in the film. Cinematographer Philippe Rousselot and production designer Deborah Evans were responsible for making suburban and rural Georgia read as Northern Virginia, across months of production, controlling every visual detail from architecture to signage to tree coverage. The geography of the film is entirely fabricated for logistical and financial reasons. The Virginia Cemetery at dawn, the streets the players walk through, the school hallways, all Georgia dressed to look like somewhere else. The locations were invented, and the racial tension shown on screen was also shaped significantly beyond documented reality. Number 2. That deep, convincing ensemble of players, the way they move together, argue, and bond with a specificity that feels earned, is one of the things that makes the film hold up across repeated viewings. The casting behind that result was a high-stakes gamble executed on a very tight clock. With only Denzel Washington as a recognizable star and a total budget of $30 million, casting director Ronna Kress had approximately 7 weeks to fill the entire ensemble before cameras rolled. Almost none of the actors were established names at the time. What she assembled was remarkable in retrospect. Ryan Gosling, Hayden Panettiere, Kate Bosworth, Donald Faison, Wood Harris, and Ethan Suplee all came from this casting run. Most were playing high schoolers despite being significantly older. Wood Harris, who played Julius Campbell, was approximately 30 years old during production. Washington's approach throughout filming was deliberate. He stayed in character as the demanding, cold coach, refusing photographs, maintaining distance, but told the young cast privately that many of them would become stars. Donald Faison credited that us versus Denzel dynamic with forging a genuine bond between cast members that the camera naturally picked up. A budget-constrained gamble on unknowns produced one of the most career-launching ensemble casts in modern sports film history. You are watching a room full of future stars being shaped in real time. and the real story those performances are built around was far calmer than almost anyone realizes. Number 1. The searing racial tension at training camp, the unbreakable brotherhood between Jerry Bruckheimer and Julius Campbell. The sense that this team was holding a city together, that is the emotional foundation of the film. And by the accounts of the real people involved, the movie elevated all of it significantly. The real players and coaches have said consistently that Alexandria was not as divided or dangerous as depicted. T.C. Williams had already been integrated since 1965, 6 years before the events of the movie. The 1971 consolidation merged existing programs. It was not a first contact between strangers. The friendship between Berthier and Julius Campbell was genuine, but players from the actual 1971 team described it as one of many strong relationships, not the singular bond the film centers its emotional architecture around. The restaurant scene, where Alan Bosley is refused service, was invented outright with no documented basis. Gregory Allen Howard pushed back on players who downplayed the tensions, asking who wants to say we hated each other, but former coach Bill Yost's circle maintained that Disney took liberties and overstated the atmosphere of danger. The film compresses and fictionalizes a calmer reality into a sharper parable, and that is precisely why it works, why it stays quotable, and why it endures. Knowing the real story was quieter reveals it as a deliberate myth built on a true foundation. That myth is what 25 years of viewers have connected to. Remember, the Titans endures because it transformed a quieter, true story into something people still quote, still sing, and still feel. It was rejected across Hollywood, sanitized by Disney, shot entirely in Georgia while pretending to be Virginia. Its most iconic scene came from a producer's location note. Its timeline was rearranged to manufacture drama the real season never delivered. Its composer was replaced mid-production. None of it was supposed to come together the way it did. Every compromise, every rewrite, every last-minute change shaped a film playing in classrooms and locker rooms for more than 2 decades. If this video surprised you, drop your favorite fact in the comments. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who loves this movie as much as you do. And as always, left side, strong side. We'll see you next time.